The rain pounded against the windshield as Victoria Hayes maneuvered her beat-up Honda through the crowded streets of downtown Seattle. The pizza delivery bag on her passenger seat contained what might be the most expensive order she'd ever handled. 12 gourmet pizzas for some big corporate event at Blackwell Industries. The delivery fee alone would cover her rent for the next 2 weeks. Victoria had been delivering pizzas for Tony's Authentic Italian for 3 years now, ever since she dropped out of business school when her father's medical bills drained the family savings. Most people saw her as just another college dropout making ends meet, but Victoria possessed something rare, an instinct for business that she'd inherited from her entrepreneurial grandmother. The Blackwell Industries Tower loomed. Ahead, a gleaming monument to success that seemed to pierce the gray Seattle sky. Victoria had always wondered what it would be like to work in a place like that, to wear expensive suits and make decisions that affected thousands of people. Instead, she wore a wrinkled pizza delivery uniform and worried about making her car payment. She parked in the loading dock and gathered the pizza bags, checking her reflection in the building's glass doors. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her uniform bore the grease stains of a long shift. She looked nothing like the polished professionals she glimpsed through the lobby windows. The security guard directed her to the executive floor. "Big board meeting today," he explained. "They're deciding whether to acquire some tech company, probably worth millions." Victoria nodded politely, though inside she felt a familiar pang of regret. She'd studied business acquisitions in college, before life forced her to leave. She could have been sitting in meetings like that, analyzing market trends and growth potential. Instead, she was delivering their lunch. The elevator rose smoothly to the 42nd floor, and Victoria found herself in a world of marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. The receptionist pointed her toward a conference room where voices could be heard in heated discussion. "The quarterly projections don't support this acquisition," a man was saying. "We're looking at a potential loss of $15 million in the first year alone." Victoria knocked softly and entered the room. 20 executives in expensive suits turned to look at her, and she felt suddenly self-conscious about her appearance. At the head of the table sat a man who could only be Marcus Blackwell himself. Tall, with dark hair just touched with silver at the temples and eyes the color of storm clouds. "Your lunch is here," Victoria announced, setting the boxes on the conference table. "Thank you," Marcus said, his voice deep and surprisingly warm. "I apologize, but we're in the middle of something important. Gregory will handle the payment." As his assistant moved to pay her, Victoria couldn't help but overhear the ongoing discussion. They were debating whether to acquire a small software company called Digital Dynamics. The numbers they were throwing around didn't make sense to her. "Excuse me," Victoria said, surprising herself with her boldness. "I couldn't help but overhear. Are you really planning to pay $45 million for Digital Dynamics?" The room fell silent. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry, Miss Hayes. Victoria Hayes." She felt her cheeks burning but pressed on. "It's just that Digital Dynamics had a security breach 6 months ago that they never fully disclosed. Their client retention rate dropped by 30%, and they've been bleeding talent to competitors." Jonathan Pierce, Marcus's rival who'd been arguing against the acquisition, leaned forward with interest. "How could you possibly know that?" Victoria shrugged. "I deliver to a lot of tech companies. You hear things, plus I read the trade publications while I'm waiting in lobbies." She paused, realizing she might have overstepped. "I should go." "Wait," Marcus said, standing up. His full attention was now focused on Victoria, and she felt a strange flutter in her stomach. "What else do you know about Digital Dynamics?" Victoria hesitated. These people probably spent more on lunch than she made in a month. What business? Did she have offering advice to billionaires? But something in Marcus's expression encouraged her to continue. "Their cloud storage technology is outdated," she said. 3 of their major clients, including Meridian Corp., are switching to competitors next quarter. If you're looking at them for their client base, you're buying a sinking ship." The room erupted in whispers. Victoria watched as several executives pulled out phones, presumably to verify her claims. Jonathan Pierce was scribbling notes, while Marcus continued to study her with those penetrating gray eyes. "Gregory," Marcus said to his assistant, "can you confirm what Miss Hayes just told us?" The assistant was already typing on his tablet. After a few minutes, he looked up with surprise. "Sir, she's right. Meridian Corp just announced they're switching providers. The press release went out an hour ago." Victoria felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with terror. She'd just potentially cost or saved this company millions of dollars. Either way, she was definitely not getting a tip. Marcus walked around the table until he was standing directly in front of her. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, and the way his expensive suit couldn't quite hide the breadth of his shoulders. He smelled like expensive cologne and success. "Miss Hayes," he said quietly, "where did you go to school?" "University of Washington, business program." She didn't mention that she'd never finished. "And now you're delivering pizzas." It wasn't a question, and Victoria felt her defenses rising. "It's honest work." "I didn't say it wasn't." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then made a decision that would change both their lives. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to table the digital dynamics discussion for now. Miss Hayes, could I speak with you privately?" The other executives filed out, with Jonathan Pierce shooting Victoria a curious glance as he left. Soon it was just Victoria and Marcus in the conference room, the abandoned pizza boxes between them like a reminder of the gulf in their circumstances. "Tell me about yourself," Marcus said, settling into a chair and gesturing for her to do the same. Victoria remained standing. "There's not much to tell. I needed a job. Tony's was hiring." "That's not what I mean." Marcus leaned back, studying her. "You just saved my company potentially millions of dollars with information you gathered while delivering food. That's not something someone does by accident." Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I pay attention. It's a habit. It's a gift." Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city spread below them. "I started this company when I was 25 with nothing but an idea and a loan from my grandmother. I've spent 15 years building it into what it is today. Do you know what the most valuable thing in business is, Miss Hayes?" "Money," Victoria guessed. Marcus turned back to her with a slight smile. "Information and instinct. The ability to see what others miss, to find opportunity in unexpected places." He paused. "How would you like a job?" Victoria blinked. "I'm sorry?" "A real job." "Here. I need someone who can think outside the box. Someone who isn't trapped by conventional wisdom." Marcus pulled a business card from his wallet and wrote something on the back. "Come in Monday morning. We'll start you as a business analyst and see where it goes." Victoria stared at the card in her hand. "Mr. Blackwell, I appreciate the offer, but I don't have a degree. I can't just walk into a corporate job." "Why not? You just proved you understand business better than half my executives." Marcus walked back to her, and Victoria caught her breath at his proximity. "Sometimes the best insights come from the most unexpected places." "This is crazy," Victoria whispered. "The best opportunities usually are." Marcus reached out and gently touched her hand. "What do you have to lose?" Victoria thought about her cramped apartment, her student loans, her father's medical bills. She thought about her dreams of having a career that mattered, of being more than just another working class girl struggling to get by. "Nothing," she realized. "I have nothing to lose." Marcus smiled, and Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. "Then I'll see you Monday morning, 9 o'clock sharp." As Victoria left the building, pizza bags forgotten in the elevator, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just taken a dramatic turn. She didn't know that Marcus Blackwell was watching her from his office window, or that he was feeling something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine intrigue about another person. Neither of them realized that Jonathan Pierce was already planning how to use this unexpected development to his advantage. The game was about to begin, and Victoria Hayes had just become the most important piece on the board. The rain had stopped by the time Victoria reached her car, and for the first time in years, the future felt full of possibility. Victoria stared at her reflection in the department store mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The navy blue blazer and pencil skirt made her look professional, competent even. Nina Rodriguez, her best friend and roommate, stood behind her with tears in her eyes. "I can't believe this is really happening," Nina whispered. "My best friend is going to work for Marcus Blackwell." Victoria smoothed down the blazer nervously. "I still think this might be some elaborate joke. People like me don't just walk into corporate jobs. People like you deserve every opportunity," Nina said firmly. "You're the smartest person I know, Vic. You've been wasting your talents delivering pizzas." Sunday night had been sleepless for Victoria. She'd researched Blackwell Industries until her eyes burned, reading every article, every financial report she could find. Marcus Blackwell had built his company from nothing, specializing in enterprise software solutions. His net worth was estimated at over $2 billion, and he was known for his unconventional business strategies and his ability to spot talent in unexpected places. Monday morning arrived with typical Seattle drizzle. Victoria stood outside the Blackwell Industries tower at 8:45, clutching a folder containing her hastily printed resume and the few business courses she'd completed online. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she entered the marble lobby. Gregory Ashford met her at the elevator. Marcus's assistant was impeccably dressed and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who wielded significant behind-the-scenes power. "Miss Hayes," he said with a polite smile, "Mr. Blackwell is eager to get started. I'll show you to your office." Victoria nearly stumbled. "My office?" "Mr. Blackwell believes in providing proper resources for his team members." Gregory led her down a hallway lined with glass-walled offices. "Here we are." The office was small but elegant, with a view of the city and a mahogany desk that probably cost more than Victoria's car. Her nameplate already sat on the desk. "Victoria, Hayes, business analyst." "This is surreal," she murmured. "Mr. Blackwell will see you in 15 minutes, Gregory said. "There's coffee in the break room. And your computer is already set up with access to our internal systems. Password is on the sticky note." Alone in her office, Victoria sank into the leather chair and tried to process what was happening. 3 days ago, she'd been worried about making rent. Now she was sitting in a corner office in one of Seattle's most prestigious companies. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Marcus Blackwell stood in her doorway, looking impossibly handsome in a charcoal gray suit. His presence seemed to fill the small space. "Good morning, Victoria. I hope you're settling in well." "It's incredible," Victoria said, standing up quickly. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Blackwell." "Marcus," he corrected. "We're going to be working closely together. No need for formalities." He stepped into the office, and Victoria caught that same subtle scent of expensive cologne that had distracted her Friday. "I have a project I'd like you to take a look at." He handed her a thick folder. "We're considering expanding into the healthcare software market. I want your analysis of the current players and potential opportunities." Victoria opened the folder, scanning the preliminary research. "How long do I have?" 2 weeks. But Victoria... Marcus paused, his gray eyes serious. "I should warn you that some people here aren't happy about your hiring. They think I'm taking a risk bringing in someone without traditional credentials." "Are you?" Victoria asked quietly. Marcus smiled, and she felt that flutter in her stomach again. "I've built my career on calculated risks. This feels like the best bet I've made in years." After Marcus left, Victoria threw herself into the healthcare project. She spent hours analyzing market data, reading industry reports, and identifying gaps in current offerings. The work was challenging and intellectually stimulating in a way that delivering pizzas had never been. But not everyone at Blackwell Industries welcomed her presence. During her first team meeting, she could feel the skeptical stares and hear the whispered comments. The other analysts had MBAs from prestigious schools and years of experience. Victoria had a high school diploma and an encyclopedic knowledge of Seattle's food delivery routes. Jonathan Pierce made his feelings clear from the beginning. Marcus's former friend and current rival had offices on the same floor, and he seemed to enjoy making Victoria uncomfortable. "So you're Blackwell's latest charity case," he said, cornering her by the coffee machine on her third day. "Don't get too comfortable. These pet projects of his never last long." Victoria met his gaze steadily. "I'm here to work, Mr. Pierce. Same as everyone else." "Are you?" Jonathan's smile was cold. "Or are you here because Marcus finds you interesting?" Heat rose in Victoria's cheeks, but she kept her voice level. "My personal life is none of your business." "Everything that happens in this building is my business," Jonathan said. "I've been watching Marcus for 15 years. I know his patterns." Victoria wanted to ask what he meant by that, but Jonathan was already walking away. His words left her unsettled and confused. Was there something between her and Marcus that she wasn't seeing? The chemistry she felt whenever he was near, was it one-sided? Her answer came the following Friday when she presented her healthcare analysis to the executive team. Victoria had worked tirelessly on the presentation, identifying 3 specific opportunities for market entry and outlining potential partnerships with existing healthcare providers. "The telehealth market is expected to grow by 40% over the next 5 years, she explained, clicking through her slides. "But most current platforms focus on general medicine. There's a significant gap in specialized care, particularly mental health and chronic disease management." The room was quiet as she outlined her recommendations. Victoria could see some executives exchanging glances, but she couldn't read their expressions. When she finished, Marcus leaned forward. "This is excellent work, Victoria. You've identified opportunities that our previous analysts missed entirely." Jonathan Pierce cleared his throat. "It's certainly ambitious, but Miss Hayes, don't you think you're being a bit presumptuous? Healthcare software requires regulatory expertise, clinical partnerships, compliance knowledge. These aren't areas where someone with your background would have experience." Victoria felt the familiar heat of embarrassment, but she forced herself to respond calmly. "You're right that I don't have direct healthcare experience, but sometimes an outside perspective can identify opportunities that industry insiders overlook. I've done extensive research on the regulatory requirements, and I believe the partnerships I've outlined would provide the necessary clinical expertise." "Research," Jonathan repeated dismissively. "That's not the same as real-world experience." "Neither is an MBA," Victoria shot back, surprising herself with her boldness. "Business school teaches theory. I'm talking about market reality." The tension in the room was palpable. Victoria realized she might have gone too far, challenging a senior executive in front of the entire team. But Marcus was looking at her with something that might have been admiration. "I think we've heard enough for today," Marcus said finally. "Victoria, excellent work. I'd like to move forward with the first phase of your recommendations." After the meeting, Victoria was packing up her materials when Marcus approached her. "Walk with me," he said quietly. They left the conference room together, and Victoria could feel eyes following them down the hallway. Marcus led her to his office, closing the door behind them. "You handled that well," he said. "I probably shouldn't have argued with Mr. Pierce in front of everyone." Marcus moved closer, and Victoria's breath caught. "Jonathan has been questioning my decisions for 15 years. He's never been right yet." "Why does he dislike me so much?" Victoria asked. "I've barely spoken to him." Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying her face. "Jonathan thinks I hired you for the wrong reasons." "What reasons?" "He thinks I'm attracted to you." The words hung in the air between them. Victoria felt her heart racing as Marcus stepped closer. "Is he right?" she whispered. Instead of answering, Marcus reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch sent electricity through her entire body. "Victoria," he said softly, "you're brilliant, beautiful, and completely unlike anyone I've ever met. Jonathan's right to be concerned, Marcus," Victoria began. But she didn't know how to finish the sentence. "I know this complicates things," he continued. "Office relationships are never simple, especially given our positions. But I can't pretend I don't feel something when I'm with you." Victoria looked up into his gray eyes and saw her own feelings reflected there. The attraction that had been building since their first meeting was mutual, powerful, and undeniable. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we figure out how to navigate this together," Marcus said. "If you want to." Victoria thought about Jonathan Pierce's warnings, about the office politics and the complications that would inevitably arise. She thought about the career opportunity she'd been given and whether she was willing to risk it for something as uncertain as love. Then she looked at Marcus again and realized that some risks were worth taking. "I want to," she said simply. Marcus smiled and leaned down to kiss her, gentle and tentative at first, then with growing passion as Victoria responded. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "This is going to be complicated," Marcus murmured against her hair. "The best things usually are," Victoria replied, echoing his words from their first meeting. Neither of them noticed Jonathan Pierce watching from the hallway, his expression dark with calculation. The game was about to become much more dangerous, and Victoria Hayes had just made herself the perfect target. 3 months into her new life at Blackwell Industries, Victoria felt like she was living in a dream. Her healthcare software recommendations had been approved for development. She'd earned the grudging respect of most of her colleagues, and her relationship with Marcus was deepening into something she'd never experienced before. They were careful to keep their romance private at work, but the connection between them was undeniable. Marcus would find excuses to stop by her office. Their hands would brush when passing documents, and their eyes would meet across conference rooms with a heat that made Victoria's pulse race. "You're glowing," Nina observed one evening as Victoria got ready for another business dinner with Marcus. "I haven't seen you this happy since, well, ever." Victoria smiled, adjusting the sapphire blue dress Marcus had bought her for their first real date. "I never thought I could have this, Nina. A career I love, a man who sees me as an equal. It feels too good to be true." "Maybe that's because it is," Nina said softly. Victoria turned to look at her friend. "What do you mean?" "I'm just saying, be careful. Rich guys like Blackwell, they live in a different world. And from what I've read about him online, you're not his usual type." "What's that supposed to mean?" Nina pulled up a series of photos on her tablet. His ex-girlfriends, socialites, models, women who grew up in his world. "You're amazing, Vic, but you're also poor?" Victoria finished, feeling a familiar stab of insecurity. "Different," Nina corrected gently. "I just don't want you to get hurt if this is some kind of phase for him." Victoria wanted to argue, to defend Marcus and their relationship, but Nina's words planted a seed of doubt that she couldn't quite shake. She'd been so caught up in the romance of it all that she hadn't really considered what their different backgrounds might mean long-term. That doubt grew stronger the next evening when Marcus took her to a charity gala at the Four Seasons. Victoria had never attended such an event, and despite Marcus's reassurances and the expensive gown he'd insisted on buying her, she felt like an imposter among Seattle's elite. "Victoria, I'd like you to meet some friends of mine," Marcus said, leading her toward a group of impeccably dressed couples. "This is Thomas and Catherine Westbrook and David and Miranda Chen." The introductions were polite but cool. Victoria could see the questions in their eyes. Who was this unknown woman on Marcus Blackwell's arm? Where had she come from? What was her background? Victoria works with me at Blackwell Industries, Marcus explained. She's one of our most promising analysts. How interesting, Catherine Westbrook said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And where did you work before joining Marcus's company, dear? Victoria felt her cheeks burn. I was between opportunities. Victoria has a natural talent for business strategy, Marcus interjected smoothly. Sometimes the best insights come from fresh perspectives. The conversation moved on, but Victoria noticed how the group's dynamic changed. She wasn't one of them, and everyone knew it. When Marcus excused himself to speak with other donors, Victoria found herself alone with the women. You know, dear, Miranda Chen said in a voice dripping with false kindness, Marcus has always been charitable. He likes to help people who are less fortunate. I'm not a charity case, Victoria said quietly. Of course not, Catherine agreed. But you have to understand, Marcus moves in very specific circles. His family has expectations, business relationships to consider. A man in his position can't just follow his heart. Victoria excused herself and escaped to the bathroom, where she stared at herself in the mirror. The reflection showed a beautiful woman in an expensive dress, but all Victoria could see was the pizza delivery girl who didn't belong. When Marcus found her 20 minutes later, she was standing on the hotel's terrace, looking out at the city lights. There you are, he said, slipping his arms around her from behind. I've been looking everywhere for you. Your friends don't approve of me, Victoria said without turning around. Marcus was quiet for a moment. They don't know you yet. Once. They do. Marcus, be honest with me. What is this between us? Victoria turned in his arms, searching his face. Am I some kind of experiment? A way to rebel against your social circle? How can you ask me that? Marcus's voice was genuinely hurt. Victoria, you're the most real person I've ever met. You're brilliant, you're genuine, you challenge me in ways no one else ever has. But your world is full of people who bore me to death, Marcus interrupted. Do you think I care what they think? I'm falling in love with you, Victoria. Not your background, not your bank account, not your connections, you. The words should have made Victoria feel better. But something in his eyes made her wonder if he was trying to convince himself as much as her. Their relationship continued, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. Victoria threw herself into work, determined to prove that she belonged at Blackwell Industries, regardless of her personal relationship with Marcus. She was developing a revolutionary patient portal system that would integrate with existing healthcare networks when Pierce made his move. Working late again? Jonathan appeared in her office doorway one evening when the building was nearly empty. The development team needs the technical specifications by tomorrow, Victoria said without looking up from her computer. You know, I've been watching you these past few months, Jonathan said, settling into the chair across from her desk. You're good at this, very good. It's almost a shame. A shame that you're going to lose it all. Jonathan's smile was predatory. Did you really think no one would find out about your past? Victoria's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Jonathan pulled out a manila folder and placed it on her desk. Victoria Hayes, age 26. Father deceased from complications related to diabetes. Mother working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Dropped out of UW Business School when the family couldn't afford tuition anymore. Oh, and here's the interesting part. Victoria's hands shook as she opened the folder. Inside were photos of her in her pizza delivery uniform, along with copies of her employment records from Tony's Authentic Italian. 3 years delivering pizzas, Jonathan continued. But that's not the best part. The best part is this. He pulled out another document. A citation for trespassing at the Meridian Corp building 6 months ago. You were caught going through their dumpster looking for discarded documents. Victoria's world tilted. The citation had been dismissed after she explained that she was looking for recyclables. But seeing it here, in this context, made her actions look calculated and deceptive. Corporate espionage is a serious crime, Jonathan said softly. Especially when it's used to influence business decisions worth millions of dollars. That's not what happened, Victoria whispered. Isn't it? You somehow knew about Meridian Corp's contract cancellation before it was publicly announced. You used that information to influence Marcus's decision about Digital Dynamics. Some might call that insider trading. Victoria realized she was trapped. The truth was that she'd overheard a Meridian Corp employee complaining about the switch during a pizza delivery, but she couldn't prove that now. Jonathan had constructed a narrative that made her look like a calculating opportunist who had used illegal means to impress Marcus. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you gone," Jonathan said simply. "Resign quietly and I'll keep this information to myself. Try to fight it, and I'll make sure everyone knows that Marcus Blackwell's girlfriend is a corporate spy who seduced her way into his company." Marcus won't believe that, won't he? Jonathan leaned back in his chair. Think about it, Victoria. A pizza delivery girl with inside information about his biggest competitors? A woman who appeared at exactly the right moment with exactly the right knowledge? It's quite a coincidence. Victoria felt sick. When viewed through Jonathan's twisted lens, her entire relationship with Marcus looked calculated and false. "You have until Monday to decide," Jonathan said, standing up. "But remember, I'm not just threatening your career, I'm threatening his. If this story gets out, Marcus will be investigated for insider trading. His company could be destroyed." After Jonathan left, Victoria sat alone in her office, staring at the damning documents. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd hoped for, was crumbling around her. Worse, she was potentially dragging Marcus down with her. Her phone buzzed, with a text from Marcus. "Dinner at my place? I have something important to ask you." Victoria stared at the message, remembering the small velvet box she'd glimpsed in his desk drawer the week before. Marcus was going to propose, and she was going to have to break his heart instead.